Mega Man: The Wily Wars is a big deal if you're a Blue Bomber fan living in the United States. Until now, this somewhat obscure SEGA Genesis compilation of Mega Man's first 3 games has only ever been made available to North American players via the equally obscure SEGA Channel, a pay-to-play service enabling customers to access certain Genesis games online. One of those games was Mega Man: The Wily Wars, and you better believe I wanted to play it when it originally released on the SEGA Channel way back in December of 1994. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, probably the channel's prohibitively high subscription fee, my parents never signed up for the service and, like many American kids, I never got to fight in the Wily Wars back in the day. But now, nearly 25 whole years later, that collective gap in our Mega Man gaming history is finally set to be filled by an unlikely source, the SEGA Genesis Mini console, and it's no stretch to say that Mega Man: The Wily Wars is probably the Micro Mega Drive's most notable included title for many gamers residing in the United States. So let's break down what the Wily Wars actually is. Essentially, what you're getting here are SEGA Genesis ports of Mega Man's first 3 NES adventures, and these ports are rather curious in nature. They're not exactly better than the original NES versions they're based on, but they do feature an alternative 16-bit take on classic Mega Man's music and graphics that you literally can't find anywhere else. But it's not just window dressing. With the Wily Wars development outsourced to Minakuchi Engineering, the same outside developer responsible for most of the Game Boy Mega Man titles, the gameplay mechanics in the Wily Wars feel slightly off-kilter and feature some odd difficulty adjustments that are sure to surprise and delight fans who have played through the NES versions countless times by now. For example, Cutman is generally known to be a wimp in the first Mega Man game, easily falling to a few shots from the Mega Buster. But take on the Wily Wars version of Cutman with nothing more than the Mega Buster and suddenly you're in for a long fight, forcing even NES Mega Man veterans to change their approach. That's just one example, but these occasional and decidedly random balance changes exist across all 3 games and are a delightfully fresh surprise for longtime fans, resulting in ports of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 that are at once harder and easier than their original NES counterparts. And for the technically minded Mega Man fans out there, take comfort in the knowledge that the version of the Wily Wars included here in the Genesis Mini is the 60Hz NTSC version, so everything runs at full speed, just as it should. All this said, what about newcomers to Mega Man who were approaching the Wily Wars without the context of the NES games or other series history in mind? Well, these are still competent ports of the first 3 Mega Man games, 2 of which are considered to stand among the best 2D action platformers of all time. Because it served as the original blueprint its many sequels would build and improve upon, the first Mega Man game feels somewhat rough around the edges in 2019, featuring multiple punishingly difficult elements and level sections that often feel unfair. It is still a fun platforming romp overall though, and fortunately less skilled players can brute force their way through the tough stuff using the Genesis Mini's save state functionality. Mega Man 2 and 3 meanwhile are considered to be among the creme de la creme of 2D action platformers to this day, and rightly so. Mega Man 2 persists as a shining example of pitch-perfect level design with a couple of frustrating exceptions toward the end of the game, and Mega Man 3 rounds out the package as the best game in it, with equally excellent gameplay that remains fantastic throughout, alongside a lengthier adventure as well as a slightly more emphasized story. While janky physics, a heavier feeling Mega Man, and an incredibly slow-firing Mega Buster ensure these ports never live up to their NES counterparts, and their more precise, pixel-perfect gameplay, all 3 games remain perfectly fun to blast through in their Genesis incarnations. And then there's Wily Tower, an original scenario totally unique to the Wily Wars that becomes available after you complete all 3 games in one save file. Featuring a handful of new levels and bosses alongside 3 eclectic new robot masters inspired by characters from the ancient Chinese novel Journey to the West, Wily Tower is likely the biggest draw for fans who have never played the Wily Wars before. Even more excitingly, Wily Tower allows you to mix and match 8 weapons and support abilities from Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 to take with you into battle. Each game's entire arsenal is included for consideration, and your selections can be swapped out between levels, allowing for a great deal of fun experimentation within these original stages. Now, all told, the Wily Tower portion of the game is rather brief, and most of the new bosses are pretty easy to overcome once you learn their rather simplistic patterns, and especially once you suss out their weaknesses, but it's a solid capstone to the overall Wily Wars concept and more or less an essential experience for die-hard Mega Man fans. With Mega Man's own physics and the overall gameplay in the Wily Wars being solid enough in their own right but coming up short compared to the NES originals, much of the focus is naturally shifted onto the audiovisual differences the Genesis brings to each game. Compelling for longtime Mega Man fans in the same way Super Mario All-Stars was back in 1993 for players weaned on the NES originals, the Wily Wars reinterprets the visual design of each game for more modern hardware, oftentimes leading to stages that feel wildly different from their original 8-bit versions in terms of atmosphere and setting. In particular, backgrounds that were once black voids on the NES have been completely filled in here, totally altering the visual context of some stages. Did you know, for example, that parts of a Lekman stage take place outside, or that the end of Hardman stage takes place at a different time of day than the beginning? And that's to say nothing of Top Man stage, which may as well be an entirely different setting for all of its graphical differences. These and other visual alterations, including a great sprite set for Mega Man that is completely unique to this game, are a blast to discover as you play the Wily Wars for the first time as a longtime fan, and the novelty of these alternative takes on Mega Man 1 through 3 naturally extends to their soundtracks. Music is one of the most important parts of any Mega Man game, and on top of the original tunes for Wily Tower being among the best the series has to offer, each classic title's beloved soundtrack transitions over to the Genesis hardware generally intact. It's mostly what you'd expect, with the iconic NES music sounding like it's been run through a Genesis hardware filter, but the music remains excellent and each soundtrack is fun to rediscover in the Wily Wars, with different instrumentation and a mostly slower tempo keeping the musical experience fresh for returning fans. And that's ultimately what the Wily Wars experience boils down to in general, a genuinely exciting curiosity for the hardcore Mega Man devotees who missed it the first time around, and a solid if unremarkable starting point for those new to the series. I like it. While the original NES iterations of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 are the clearly superior versions by most objective measures, the alternative Genesis takes offered in the Wily Wars are a lot of fun in their own right. Meanwhile, the unique Wily Tower segment is brief but entertaining and refreshingly experimental, making for a balanced, content-rich compilation that many true blue Mega Man fans should be rightly excited to experience for the first time. Hey, thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell to get instant notifications when we upload new content. In the meantime, keep it on GameXplain for more on Mega Man and all things gaming.